So
So they're not even-
by the time they get back, they won't notice.
It'll be grown again.
Well, Rick likes his zero. He's got that nice mower.
Yeah,
He doesn't get to use it ever.
I got one just like it.
You got it now. We good? Are we live?
Video on them.
This video is private.
Why?
This one live stream.
Change spots with Ken.
Which
Oh, yeah, well, me and you both.
says it's on.
Nah.
Check it.
He wants to put his helmet on. He don't want to see nobody.
Okay, good. Okay, so now we're gonna call the meeting to order. The July 20th, 2023 meeting of the ZBA. We'll do pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Jasmine, will you please do the roll call
Yes, Sam Frosty,
here?
say it one, Charlie Fisher.
Here.
Ken Stevens.
Here.
Clayton. Cannot pronounce the last name.
Haugen. And I'm
Hartley Davis.
here.
Okay, so we have one agenda item, which is continued application for Gracia Jameson. If you want to come up. Hey, how are you?
Sorry, this is taking so long. I thought I wanted to be here, but she's at work.
Okay,
And
so before you start, I just wanted to update everyone where we're at. So we last discussed this application at our May meeting. And we had some questions. It was postponed from the June meeting to give you all a little more time. Basically, our questions were around some land clearing and design of the shed. We've got a copy of the letter. And yeah, and then the setbacks. There was some neighbor concern about setbacks. So,
it was
After-
an April question.
well, and we have the concern too. So we sent a letter on June 20th. Just asking all these questions. And also we have a deadline, which is, I don't know, in a couple of days, from when we close the public hearing, that we have to make a decision. So the situation tonight is we want to kind of like resolve, see where we're at.
Yeah.
If we can get answers to questions, great. But we kind of need to make a decision one way or another, or reopen public hearing, which we can't do today because we didn't notice it. So we sort of have to resolve this today, so that we don't end up going beyond our deadline. So I guess yeah, so we're interested in hearing from you. I know there was some uncertainty, I think, on y'all's end about how you wanted to proceed. So
And still,
yeah.
unfortunately, just because the area where she wants the shed, she was going to cut some trees, but then she found there is skin at all. And she found out they are Berkshires, and for my daughter, it's a sacred place of the trees. It's just unknowable. So it won't be like we were thinking the Amish that they have the whole structure and read it. It cannot happen because otherwise you would have to cut trees, and that's not in her idea. She wants to maintain everything like the forest area. So it will have to be making it basically herself instead of bringing the structure, but it's still the same measurements, the 12 by 24.
Okay, so on that second question, then what will the style and design of the shed look like? It's unknown because it's going to be
It has to
Wholesale.
go around those trees.
Mhm.
There's no way to.
So then there wouldn't be any land clearing
No,
because you don't want to cut any trees.
no.
Okay. And then on the first question with setbacks, do you have any clarity on that question?
In which one?
The first question, so the setbacks is,
Explain to me.
yeah, so it's how far from the edge of the property the shed is gonna be. So your property has a shape and there's boundaries of it,
Exactly.
and there's,
And there is an area that is one closer to the Canadian people.
yeah, right,
Right?
Yeah.
Jonathan and Heather.
right.
That area.
Yeah, so
Yes.
the setback means there's part of the zoning rules are that structures have to be a certain distance
Right.
in from the edge of the property. So you can't like put it 2 feet from the edge of the property, you have to put it further in.
Exactly.
And we just wanted to confirm, because we didn't have any measurements, that the location where you're planning on putting the shed is far enough from the property line.
Definitely, we will respect those measurements
Mhm.
from the two neighbors that are there.
Okay, but you don't
But I
know.
don't know exactly the measurements, but I think, I don't know if it was Corny who gave me the measurements and we were measuring where to be away this distance from here and this distance from here. But I don't remember exactly.
Because what we have is your survey map where, yeah, there's like further back in the property where it's wider, but we
With the
don't.
Pollack, he goes to Jonathan Pollack
Mhm.
and these other people that I think they're, I don't know if they sold it, because the gentleman passed away a few months ago.
Yeah, so the setbacks that are required in R2 supposed to be 35 feet from the front, 40 feet from the back, 40 feet from the side. So we just don't know how wide, like how far it is across the length of the property. Because you've got to be 40 feet from each property line in the middle there.
Okay.
And that's why we sent the letters, because we wanted to make sure.
I know, but she's probably.
Yeah.
This is kind of the deal.
Yeah. Mhm. And, okay, and you don't know actually how, like how wide the property is there. Like how many feet it is across.
No, because like I said, it was easier before we found out that spreadsheet tree that was I skiing, but now she refuses. Trees are sacred for my daughter.
Yeah.
Kind of addresses question 3 then. Doesn't look like
Right,
there's gonna
no
be any
land clearing. Sounds like no land clearing. Okay, do other board members have any other questions or?
With regards to the setbacks, part of the information needed is gonna be for the application too, because they have to have a location of the potential structure before you start building. So you're gonna have to define that area based on the measurements from each of the sides of the property, or at least 3, depending on how much room is on the 4th side.
Right, because it's kind of skinny line. One area is out.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean,
Basically, it will be 2 because she's far away from the road. The other area will be ours. So it will be just from Jonathan Polan, the Canadian people, from the gentleman who passed away that his sister is now, right? So it's basically two.
Well, it'll definitely be three because the property narrows down like this, so the farther you go towards the narrow section, then
No, but it's going to be like wide,
So different than where it is on the,
remember?
picture.
Yeah, we changed it to wider. Yeah, it's going to be, this is us.
Yeah.
It's going to be around
so you have to worry.
That's correct.
That, yes, you need
two
to,
people.
you have to worry about those two
These
setbacks
two.
more than this.
Is that more than here and there?
Yeah.
So these two,
Yeah.
the Canadians.
Yeah.
okay,
When was the public hearing closed? What day?
it was on our meeting on it was in a May.
23rd?
Maybe. May, would have been 25th, no, 18th would have been our meeting, May 18th.
So we got like 64 days or something. Yeah, our meeting was May.
I understand the concern about moving forward with some changes of plans, but I'm trying to zero in on exactly why the application was denied and what the variance is seeking. And I think if we roll it back, the application was denied because of the building of a structure
Without
on a land, on right?
It was
So-
principal structure.
So just follow me and just hear me out. So what I am wondering is whether or not, all things considered, we could grant the variance for putting a structure on the land, subject to any building being conforming with lots and other requirements of the town code. That's what I'm
Yeah,
wondering.
we definitely can do that. Like we can say,
Subject,
right, that like it has to meet setback requirements, et cetera, et cetera. And we can be explicit about that. I mean, and we're not approving site plans. So it doesn't, like, we don't really need a site plan. We just need the information that's, it's important for us to be sure that it's possible to do the thing in conformance, that's the right word, conformity with what's required. But we don't have to have, we're not approving a map and we're not actually issuing a permit. We're just saying either, yes, you can move forward and get a permit, or you can't.
So the application wasn't made and not granted due to the fact that the building was going to be located at a certain distance or location on the property. It was made based on the fact that there was no primary residence.
Yeah. That's correct.
that's my understanding. I'm gonna look at the decision in a second.
Yeah, that's what it says. It's because of the principal permit, you know, and looking at I mean, just doing very primitive, you know, holding a piece of paper up next to the map scale and then moving it over to the wide part of the property looks to be 200+ feet wide.
Pin to pin is 333.
Okay, yeah. And then it tapers. So if you're 40 feet off the back edge and then 40 feet off either side, that does give a pretty substantial area. But in the narrow part where it's indicated on the drawing that was submitted with the initial CEO application, that's a little more constrained. But now that we're talking about building it in situ, it's, you know, a little different because you're not having to think about getting a big trailer in. Okay. We got any more questions? Charlie, you got anything?
Trying to develop this question. I don't quite know. Then Sunday, July 21st is our cutoff from the date of the public hearing to where we have to render a decision. I would like to give the applicant some way to provide more clarification to these answers, but we're running out of time. But if we go ahead and we make a decision on this, then this becomes moot, the answering of the questions.
Right.
So how can we best facilitate the applicant to get the information that we need to give proper response before the 21st?
Or 21st.
Sunday's
Today's this one.
20th. Okay, so actually then,
Yeah, we have to
Yeah, I don't
basically
think-
resolve
I don't
it.
think there's any more time.
right now, this is it.
So I think, so what Ken was saying is, so there's kind of two things that I'm hearing. One is we sent this letter because we want, we heard the public comments. We distilled those comments down to these questions. We wanted to get answers to these questions. We have definitely an answer to number 3 about land clearing. We have a sort of answer, I think, to number 2, which is it's going to be home built. They like the Amish style, but they're going to build it themselves. But we don't have like a plan or anything. And then number 1, I also feel like we have a partial answer in that it's going to go in the wider part of the property. And there's plenty of room in there with setbacks, but we don't have a pinpointed location where we can like measure distances. So I feel like we sort of have partial answer to 1, mostly complete but partial answer to 2, and a complete answer to number 3. So that's on the one hand. And then on the other hand, I'm hearing like Ken's point, which is if we don't, there's nothing binding us to having hard and fast answers to these questions, except, we don't want to make people feel like they don't answer a question. But we don't need the answers to be concrete in order to make a decision. I don't know how everyone feels about those two things because they're in a little bit of tension with each other, but that's kind of how it looks to me.
That was my problem. How do you present the question without having two conflicting answers, no matter how you ask it?
Yeah.
How do you move forward? Do you move forward, like Ken says, we're just rendering a decision based on applicant's denial.
Yeah.
But we're leaving all these caveats in if we don't answer them now. And we're leaving, I feel, too broad of a piece of paper for them to make decisions based on our decision.
Well, they would still have to get the permit from code enforcement, which does check setback.
And we will respect the 40 feet.
So like, it's not totally broad in the sense it's we're not granting any exemption to any kind of setback.
Maybe then the question is, will this affect any future applications going forward with the same?
Right, if we have similar kind of questions.
Yes.
Right,
Are
and like,
we closing the door on every future applicant with regards to how do we render a decision based on these questions if needed? In other words, we don't want people putting their favorite color building out there when it's offensive to the surrounding landowners.
Right.
You know what I mean? But once we grant this and the building department doesn't have a say in that, kind of falls back to us, I think, a little bit for us saying, yeah, go ahead and build it. There's a reason why we didn't want you to build it to begin with, but we're going to let you build it this time. I don't know.
But I think that's my opinion, and the basic fundamental is to be willing to respect as much as you can the way everything is. It's not a variant that you are going to cut trees. My daughter refers to the place as a sacred forest, and forget it, then nothing is going to be there that shouldn't. And forget about cutting any trees. So I think that can be taken into consideration.
Sure.
It's not like the code says you require 2 acres to build a house, and you get rid of everything to make a multi-mansion. That all I will see in front, everything cut long, that it's like cement for the forest area. That's the big damage, in my opinion. when you want to respect the land and you see it like it is, like it's sacred, and you are going to take care of it, I think that's the major fundamental. That's my opinion.
So I think like also to give a little more texture to what Clayton was saying, in terms of our back and forth correspondence, trying to get specific answers. It did take us a little while to get the initial letter because we didn't have secretary and there was some delay. But since then, we've had a couple phone calls, a couple emails, right? We have had, there's been back and forth in communication and
Yeah,
requests for.
but unfortunately for my daughter now, it's time of the year. I'm a widow with 2 daughters. My oldest came to New York. We went to see her because we don't see her as much. Exactly the day that was the meeting, and I told Jasmine, right? It's just been tough.
No, sure, we understand. I
Sorry.
mean, it's an extremely busy time for me too.
I know, I'm sorry for everybody.
Yeah, the biggest, I think the biggest problem at least I'm seeing in all of this is that time limit.
Right.
You know what I mean? If we had some way to extend that, then we'd be able to gather the information, give you the opportunity to present a little bit more to us. And
But what
without
I'm
that
trying
time,
to say is the intention. The intention was too many things at a busy time of the year.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't know if it can be considered intention.
Well, I think everyone understands the intention and the goals and the challenges of life that make these things hard sometimes. I think what maybe sure that you understand is we do have just this under state law, we have a time limit for how long, and that's actually supposed to be out of fairness to you.
Thank you.
Right? We don't want to just keep extending stuff when the process has gone to a certain point. So, we kind of have a couple options. One is we can, make a negative decision. I mean, we can make whatever decision we want, but like, if we deny something, we can deny it because we can say we needed more information. We were running up against a time limit. Then you can come back and reapply when there's more information. That's one option. Other option is, I think Ken's putting on the table, is we can kind of say we actually do feel comfortable with the amount of information we have. And I mean, that's a decision that we have to make. And I think the information you're sharing is relevant to some extent, but we have to balance it.
I understand.
I'm trying to get my head around, Clayton, how we could address your concern about the style of you raised, what if somebody put up an ugly monstrosity after we had given them no guidance?
I don't
There's
know.
no
Way. There's no way because there's too many variables that you could never predict in a situation like this. My concern is you'll never cover every one of them. So you have to limit the ability to not have to cover them, if that makes sense. You can't leave too broad of a stroke of the pen for everybody. There's certain people out there that'll take advantage of that. There's others, like the applicant, who's saying, listen, I'm doing this out of respect to the land and stuff like that. That's great, and I appreciate that 100%. But what about the next person or the person after that isn't taking that into consideration and aren't looking at it for the well-being of the community and the people surrounding them? You know what I mean? I know it goes kind of a little bit away, strays away from the application, but it's still something that leaves the opening.
Yeah. I mean, we can certainly condition any approval on limiting it both in terms of conformity with the setbacks and also limiting the size to what the application was for, right?
Which that would be automatic anyway, Ken, because that's the application.
Right, exactly.
That decision would be based on the application size and limitation to location. That's absolute. But even now, at this point, with now changing the location opens the door. Well, we're allowed to change the location. Why can't we change the size? It's still just a building. It's still just an accessory building.
Yeah, the variance that we're granting
It's
it
accessory
doesn't
building.
even speak to the size.
Size, right, it doesn't speak to size, it speaks to location only because it's on the application.
I think it does speak to the specific accessory, though. We're saying garden shed, we're not saying.
Right.
Right, and I think we could condition it upon, even if it doesn't require that, we could certainly condition any approval to a size limitation.
I think that's true, yeah.
That's my understanding anyways, that would be, something that we have inherently.
It's always specific to the specific instance of the specific property, right?
Um,
And that's also like, can be part of, I don't want to exactly call it a negotiation, but a back and forth with an applicant to like minimize the variance. In this case, the variance doesn't become more or less based on size, but we can still think about size. I mean,
And in the ordinary course of events, could an application for constructing a shed otherwise, would style come into play?
no, it's just a ministerial permit.
Not style as far as color, but style as far as height, absolutely.
Height, in terms of code conformance or beyond code conformance?
Performance or otherwise, yes.
Yeah, but it could be any paint color, it could be any crazy shape, someone could come up with, as long as it didn't violate lot coverage, height, fire code stuff, but it's a ministerial permit. It's just like, hey, I want to put up a shed. Okay, great.
At the end of the day, I think we're basically okaying or denying the fact that we're allowing an accessory building that's not connected to anything else,
Something without else.
without a primary.
Without a single building.
Yeah.
Non-tertiaries.
Is gonna open a door, but on a case-by-case basis is what it's gonna be. I mean, I guarantee you're gonna have other people in the same boat because it's always been denied as far as I know.
Yeah,
Which,
Mm-hmm.
you mean variance applications?
Yeah.
Or,
Because in order to put just a shed up with no primary building, you need variance.
right. So you don't think that a variance for that has been granted ever?
I don't know of any.
Not that I can.
Just because they were, I'm pretty sure it's the same reason we're hesitant is because it is gonna open up a door. But as long as, we do our due diligence and it's case by case by case,
And then,
it shouldn't be a problem.
in this instance, I don't think we're afforded the time for the due diligence completely. I'm just afraid that
Well,
we're gonna overlook something, we're gonna miss an opportunity to properly form this applicant's decision.
Can we, so, I think
Yeah.
it's maybe a closer call than it would have been a couple of months ago, but if we look back, Sam, I have the draft,
Yeah, I have a.
and I was wondering whether or not if we reviewed the questions and saw if we had specific enough. So there are a series of questions that we have to answer in considering whether or not to grant the variance. And they're not too many of them. And I think maybe that might shed some light on how far off we are from having information
Good reading.
that we might need. For instance, the first one is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. So does that call, and I think our initial answer to this was finding, because sheds are allowed in the R2 zoning, there is no detrimental impact. However, the board is mindful that there may be some circumstances where allowing accessory use in the absence of a principal use could cause a detrimental impact. I think that comes back to what you were saying before, that in a particular in particular, if a lot lacked tree cover,
Is it at 8 times?
or if an applicant wanted to place a structure which was less than 200 square feet in a setback.
I think you can, structures that are below a certain size are exempt from setback.
Then it wouldn't even need a variance, right?
Well, it would still be
Oh, an area variance,
it would
right?
still be an area variance, but
But it's a 200-foot rule.
but in this case, it has to meet setback in order to get a permit because it's bigger than 200 square feet.
And the,
288.
So, right, what we're saying, what we wrote in our, when we were thinking about it a 2 months ago was just here, we don't think it seems detrimental. We were giving some reasons for that, but we're also saying a couple specific places where we think it could be detrimental. We could add to that, that in this instance, applicant states there will be no tree clearing and lots fully wooded. I mean, it makes it,
It does, but I don't think we have the authority to step it.
Yeah.
well, that's not a
If you do that,
requirement,
say
that's
one-
just a finding, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're saying in this, it's a way of saying, because one of the things that I'm hearing your concern about, Clayton, is like, we are a judicial body, we are setting some sort of precedent, right? So if we do end up deciding that this is okay, it's important that the reasons why this is okay are outlined in our findings. And if one of our findings is, hey, if this was a different lot that, for example, did require tree clearing, or for example, was already cleared so that you would see everything, then it would be noticeably different. And even though that's not any kind of requirement, we're explaining our thought process so that if we did have a different applicant who comes in and says, hey, you granted a variance a while ago, we could say, well, yeah, we did, but
Minimal.
our reasons there had to do with tree cover, right? So if there are specific things here, I think that's maybe a needle that we can thread a little bit in terms of maybe we can't.
I've never been a fan of having to potentially threaten yes in the future. I'm more of a, you know what, we decided for this reason and it doesn't apply to potentially any other
Yeah,
application.
well, that's what we can say here, right? Like in this instance,
You would call it minimal environmental impact.
in this instance, the lot is fully wooded. And the applicant states there will be no
Fully wooded. Isn't this for a gardening shed?
forest gardening with no trees.
Forest gardening?
Yeah.
Forest gardening is maybe I can explain.
Okay.
Forest gardening is like, it's a type of like kind of progressive agriculture where the idea is there's a lot of edible things that can grow in the woods and you have layers of, you know, the trees create shade and then there's understory plants and then you have mushrooms and berries and all kinds of things.
Like 47.
Forest agriculture, so it's like a way of trying to see the woods as a place where you can create environments where you're able to get some food crops. So there's like some fruit trees that can grow in the understory that people can plant and things like that.
I'm now gonna flip sides. If we grant the variance though, recognizing that these are the conditions, is there any control on what happens the next day?
I don't know. You could decide the day after this is granted to clear cut the lot. And there's
No,
nothing,
no.
I understand, you would never do, I'm not saying you, an applicant in the same
Adriana
scenario.
kills me.
Yeah, an applicant in the same situation could apply and then turn around and completely change the property.
Yeah,
You know, but
in this case,
again, we can't put conditions, right? But like, we can, as reasonable people, say like, in this instance, I mean, it's true for anyone, right? Like, on my property, I've got 6 acres of woods. I could, if I wanted to, cut down every single tree tomorrow
Absolutely.
and not need permission from anybody, right? And like, that's true, they could put up the shed, sell the property in 10 years and become
Somebody else.
Yep.
Clears it. Absolutely.
And that's just like always true.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm responding more to Ken, that like, we just don't have control over that anyway. Like, it's not, and in that way, it doesn't feel, to me, it doesn't feel germane.
Right, and in saying that, I don't feel that we should put conditions that would cause somebody to relinquish control of what they want to do on their property.
Yeah, I don't think we can put them.
Right, my point is, if we put a caveat in there that says that, you know, we can't put this in there, but if we were to say, okay, you can't clear cut the property based on your application, we can't do that.
Right.
You know, I mean, outside of building code, I can see Ken's, look, man, those gears are turning, he's got.
I'm just
he's
trying
got
to,
a
I'm just
scenario
trying to,
that-
trying to wonder, you know, what exactly what the limits are.
Right,
of the
where does it
conditions
stop? We
That you
can't.
can't,
Not the first.
exactly, which was what I was thinking about. I mean, ordinarily, I mean, as a lawyer, we have a bias towards respecting precedent. And even though I don't see a particular issue with having tool sheds on properties of 2.5 acres, under most conditions.
Yes.
That, I'm trying to understand the rationale of the original thought processes that our predecessors.
In the zoning code, yeah.
Yeah,
My-
and in the zone, and trying to give that some minimal, or not minimal, but some degree of respect. Because as you said, we can't control what happens in the future on this, even though that's often the case.
Well, but also to your point, Ken, like the specific situations do matter, right? So if you're saying like, in this specific instance, it doesn't seem to you like it would have a big detrimental impact, that's actually the question we're deciding, right? And we're not saying in every instance, there's no detrimental impact. To this first question, will there be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood? And we can say no, and we can say, for the reasons that in this specific instance, it's wooded, in this specific instance, there's not going to be land clearing. But maybe people feel like there is a detrimental impact, like just the existence of the shed might, I don't see it that way, but it sounds like Ken doesn't, but like maybe others of us do think that just having a shed without a house is just detrimental. It doesn't matter.
Here's my concern. Nobody in the future, long after any of us are on this board, can't turn around and say, past practice doesn't mean proper practice. That our decision today was wrong, and now they have to qualify away why our decision was wrong. That's my concern. And boards before us have decided that, for the most part, this is not the proper way to go. I don't know. I don't know where I stand right now with regards to, do we move forward only because we're faced with a timeline where this is it? We have to decide tonight.
But
Or,
like you said before, there are many variables in order to make a decision. And there
Yeah.
is no rule without exception.
that's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
Well, but I do think like at a certain point, and I totally hear everything you're saying, but I do think at a certain point, like we do just have to say yes or no, I think this is desirable or undesirable.
We do.
And I think like, you're saying that you don't know, but I think even just on this first question, we do sort of have to decide, like for me,
We
the
do.
answer is no. And maybe we should go around and say, like, on that first question, with the findings, or I guess first it's like, is it a yes or no? But, we can put findings, but we do need to just say whether it's yes or no. And then as a board, then we go to the next question. And then we look at the aggregate of those 4 questions to make up overall decision.
Why can't you combine or don't want to combine the 2 properties? Because if you did that, that would negate everything. And then you'd be able to do whatever.
But I have 2 daughters. And I don't know, maybe one day, who knows what's going to happen.
one lot's bigger than the
I
other.
just-
And give a favor to it. But I mean, ultimately, that would make it so if you put them together, then it would, yeah, you would have no issue in dealing with a permit, no problem.
But you never know what's, I'm from another country, I'm by myself, I don't have any support from everybody, I have two daughters, a widow. It's good to have options, and I feel these give me options.
That is the second question that we were gonna come to.
That one's a little easier.
I would maybe.
Yeah, no, we had discussed this previously.
Yeah.
Our conclusion was yes, that there are alternatives.
If somebody in this situation were to withdraw the application, could they reapply at a later time?
Yeah,
Could they re?
Just asking. I wasn't sure.
also, if it's denied, they can also reapply.
Mhm.
But let's try to answer, I think we should try to answer this first question. The first question doesn't bind our final decision. But and I think we should just go around. So whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. And what's your take on that? Just yes or no? Let's try to just do yes.
No.
Harley?
No.
Clayton?
Oh, man. Yes, it's tough for me with this one because I have to say it. My answer is no. Only because I'm basing it on the information that I already had, not any information that was presented today that was changing the potential location.
Charlie?
I don't know, I'm thinking of the people in the back that might be looking at it out in their front yard and they don't want to look at something like that. So I think yes on that,
I'm gonna say yes.
yeah.
I'm gonna say no. So we have 4 no's, 1 yes, 1 yes. So the finding that we drafted, so that means we'll check no. But I think it's important to include what Charlie's saying and what the finding is. So what we wrote before was, and Ken read this, so sorry for repeating it. But because sheds are allowed in R2 zoning, there is no detrimental impact. However, the board is mindful that there may be some circumstances where allowing accessory use in the absence of principal use could cause a detrimental impact. In particular, if a lot lacked tree cover or if an applicant wanted to place a structure which was less than 200 feet in a setback. In this instance, the lot is fully wooded and the applicant states there will be no tree clearing and therefore minimal environmental impact. One member of the board has some concern of impact on neighbors being able to see it.
Yeah, that's a limited time.
Visual impact.
Are you about this specific one or in the future?
No, this one.
You mean the new location?
Any location, if you decide that you're going to move it to the northern edge of the property versus say the southern edge,
Oh.
whether or not it has an impact on the neighbors in their view.
Actually, this new one has a lot less.
Not right now. Okay, so I added 1 member of the board has some concern of impact with neighbors. Sorry. Some concern about neighbors being impacted visually by being able to see a shed in the absence of a primary structure. Okay, so we check no. Does anyone else have anything they want to see in those findings? And this is whatever we end up deciding if the findings are still the same. Going good. Let's move on to number 2. And you look hesitant.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I was just pausing over the clause, there will be no tree clearing. And I'm thinking from my experience, sometimes it's hard to have absolutely no tree clearing.
Yeah, you have to do minimal impact.
Minimal, no, minimal.
I've seen that one picture. She's standing there, there's a lot of big rocks too.
So there will be minimal or no.
Thank you.
Okay, so number 2. I think we can talk about it for a second if we want, but then I think we should just go around and say yes or no. So whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. So for me, the answer on this one is yes, they could seek this benefit through another method. Charlie, you want to go? Yeah,
Yes, they can.
Harley? Yes. Ken?
Yes.
Okay, so the finding we wrote, everyone said yes. So finding the applicant has the option of consolidating 2 adjoining parcels that are owned by the applicant into one, or they could pursue a principal use on the property. The applicant does not wish to pursue these options at this time. This was discussed in a public meeting. Okay, whether the requested area variance is substantial. So this one we had quite a bit of discussion on last time. It's another one that's, I think, a little more philosophical. It's different, like this is an area variance, and normally we're like saying, oh, instead of 8 feet, we're gonna let someone be 6 feet, or whatever, and there's sort of like a tangible amount or percent that we're varying the rule. In this case, it's a binary, right? It's like the code says you can't, and here we're being asked to say either it's okay or it's not. And so last time when we talked about that, we ended up saying, yes, we did feel it was substantial. I'm just going to read what we wrote as our draft findings, just to refresh everyone's memory. What we said is, because the applicant is asking to have an accessory use where there is no principal use, the board sees this as a substantial variance request. However, the board also sees the substantiality being mitigated by the fact that sheds are allowed as accessory uses in this zone, where a primary use such as agricultural use exists. It is also mitigated because if the circumstances were only slightly different, say the shed was accessory, I think even in the absence of another structure. So where we kind of landed was that we just felt like on a very technically it was substantial because it's just like a binary. We're flipping a switch from one side to another. We're not just like moving a dial a little bit. But we also sort of felt like there were those mitigating factors to substantiality. So I'm going to go around again. Harley, you want to say yes or no first this time?
Yes.
Ken?
That was number 3, correct?
Yeah, number 3.
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're all saying yes. Are people comfortable with those findings?
Yeah.
Okay. So then number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. So that's just like, do we think this is, pretty literal this one. Okay, Clayton, you want to say yes or no on this one?
Oh, man. I'm gonna say yes, it does.
Clay, or sorry, Charlie.
Yes, you again. Yes.
You're saying yes. Okay, I'm saying no. Ken, how do you feel?
Say no.
Harley? Okay, so majority of us said no, but we should talk about why we were yeses and nos. Well, why did Clayton, why did you feel like it was a yes? Whether the proposed variance, so in this case, allowing a accessory in the absence of a primary, will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
Because it's not there now.
So just
It's
coming
not
into
there
view.
now, and what you end up with is the possibility of that structure, once again, being in a wide open field. Once again, it leads back to, I think it's question 1, where it has the potential of being viewed and seen by other people in that area. The environmental impact is, while the applicant's saying that they're not going to clear cut in this instance, which I believe, but if it were a different applicant, they could very well change the environment to make this shed or gardening, whatever it is, happen, this building happen.
Mhm. And and then the variance is leading to that adverse impact because it's like, if you don't have to have a house, which would still allow those things, but it's like, you're getting a primary use which
That's
has
correct.
value and that.
Yes.
What about for you, Charlie?
I'd say yes, because you're gonna be able to see it, especially in the winter time.
Mhm.
And even if you don't clear cut, trees lose their leaves and stuff in the winter, so it's gonna be out in the open.
You still have animals and everything else. I mean, they'll find their way around, but it still does have a slight impact on their area.
Okay, so I'm gonna write, the majority of the board finds that there's no adverse impact from the proposed variance so long as minimal land disturbance occurs in the insulation set. Some members of the board or disagree, feel that the very existence of the shed, in particular, its visibility in the winter and let's see, the potential of I mean, it sounded like the clearing was also like a key thing for you, that like there's the potential, even though in this instance there's no intention.
There's no
It's
intention.
just like there's this potential because it goes with the land. Okay, and the potential of land clearing to make way for an accessory use.
Sure, given a half an hour, I could probably build a better example, but
Can lead to adverse environmental impacts. Adverse impacts on good character or okay, so now it says finding the majority of the board finds that there is no adverse impact from the proposed variance so long as minimal land disturbance occurs in the insulation shed. Some members of the board disagree and feel that the very existence of the shed, in particular its visibility in the winter and the potential of land clearing to make way for an accessory use, can lead to adverse impacts on neighborhood character or the environment. Feel accurate?
it's well planned.
Okay. Number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. I'll start on this one. I think yes, it is self-created. Ken?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone says yes. Our draft finding was just, yes, the applicant is choosing to put up a shed without, just period. Okay, so then we have to make a determination. So to go kind of rehash some of the things we were talking about. I mean, it sounds like there's 2 basic things that we're talking about. One is, I think, the concern about setting any sort of precedent, however narrow, in terms of our findings and the specifics of this situation, where we're saying there is a pathway to having accessory uses without a principal use, and that there's just concern that even that could lead to just a lot more instances where people are wanting to do accessories without a primary use. I think there's also some concern that I'm hearing that since some of our thinking in these first 5 questions is sort of based on the specifics of this case, but we don't really have any way of binding those specifics into a decision, that not that there's distrust of this applicant, but that just like that's potentially creating a situation that could lead to adverse impacts. Then I think on the other hand, there's this feeling of, not to be glib about it, but like this is specific and it's just a shed, and maybe it's just okay for the specific reasons, but that it just doesn't feel like something that in this instance is inappropriate for this property. I think those are the two. And then I guess there's also some maybe technical procedural concerns about just like the back and forth and not having received totally specific answers, wanting to be mindful of how we handle that so that we're not opening ourselves up to people like not answering questions that we want answered. So I could start, but I kind of like to hear from everybody else before. I like to summarize instead of.
With regards to a decision.
Yeah.
Your last statement kind of sums up everything in this application as far as going forward right now. I would deny the application. This will afford the applicant the opportunity to resubmit with a little more due diligence for the board in the future. That's not to say that their application is completely a no forever, but based on the information that we have, based on the way that I answered those questions, not speaking for anybody else, it leads me to say that yes, this is an impact on the environment. Yes, it's self brought on, which really doesn't weigh in, but it is part of the equation. We can't go forward with it. We can't have the applicant have the shed now. The other thing is I don't want to give the applicant a yes based on our time constraint without gleaning more information from something they can present us. Kind of why I figured an opportunity might come forward, the applicant withdrawing and resubmitting. But it's kind of the 11th hour now. We don't have that opportunity.
Anything else, Harley? You look like you're about to talk.
I mean, I agree with the majority. I don't think it's that big of a environmental as with them doing less tree stuff, but still, everything you said is basically spot on.
So you're at a no right now.
Yeah, I want them to, if we have to vote tonight, it would be a no until we get a little more information. And now that they have the information that we want, it would actually probably be easier and a quicker decision, more prudent decision, if they came back with what we actually were looking for.
Ken?
Let me just see if I understand the consequences of saying no at this point. It means that the permit application was denied. The application for a variance was denied. The denial is without prejudice, meaning that but a new permit would have to be submitted. A new permit application, which the office would require a plan, I suspect. Right? Yes, no? Or-
I think so.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
would-
part of you're supposed to set like a sketch, like the same.
It would require at least a site
Yes.
plan and a sketch. At which point
With accurate.
Jerry would, our code enforcement officer would have to deny it because
You denied it
the
before.
legal issue, well, the legal issue or the big issue of whether or not it can be done would still be outstanding. And it would be back before, and then presumably it would be back before us with a site plan, but with an additional, with a new denial. And the costs of doing that to the applicant are just the application fees and fee to,
Yeah, there's an application fee to this board and there's an application fee to the.
code enforcement.
We have an exception where we waive the fee though.
There are, check,
We made an exception to waive the fee on a different application. It's a,
Do we decide that or is the town board?
they
I think the
decided
town
it.
board decides it.
Whoever said we did it,
town
they
board.
I
decided.
wish we could encourage town board to be.
Well, just I'm
If
saying
they
it's not our
decide-
decision is all.
If they decide,
sorry, I missed,
I said, I wish we could encourage the town board to do the same paving if the applicant were to decide if they were denied.
that would be my position, I think. That, I think I would vote, even though it's a close one for me, to deny this current variance application without prejudice to a subsequent application and with specific information with respect to the location of the proposed accessory structure and also an indication of the, I guess it would include then the setbacks, which I just want to be clear, that was a concern raised by your neighbor about the setbacks.
When
Yeah.
When you weren't here, your neighbor was here.
the one that, who,
Well, it doesn't matter who, I mean, it's on the video.
because you
I-
saw one neighbor,
You have to go back.
the Canadians, we don't see, they won't even.
I'm sorry.
Well, I think-
I'm sorry.
That's not really
I just wanted to make sure that. you
It's a
were aware.
concern that was raised at the public hearing and that the board felt was relevant and we wanted to. So it doesn't matter which neighbor, it just. We hadn't discussed it before it was brought up by the public, and then once it was brought up, we said, yeah, that does feel like something we want to look at.
And I think Clayton should, we could. It could only be a suggestion in our
Yeah.
decision that any fees be waived. To do that, to do that. I mean, and on the other hand, the other way I would go is the way I initially said, I could see approving the application to the extent that all we are saying to the code enforcement officer is that the ZBA has no problem per se with building a tool shed on this particular lot, provided that it's of this size and it meets the setback requirements.
I say no.
Yeah, so I guess I'm the only one. Okay.
Sent out letters, telephone calls, and they were too busy to get back to us with the right information. That's one thing. And well, no.
So I have two things I just want to say. One is, we don't have our attorney here. I did not have a conversation with her about these specific things. My understanding is that if we make a decision where we're saying, no, we're not granting the variance, we need to ground that in how we're looking at, answering these 5 questions, right? So we need to say, look, we weighed all of this. We had, 3 yeses and 2 no's, and even the no's were close calls because we weren't unanimous. And that's why we're denying the variance. And if we do that, then if we have the same applicant come forward with largely the same application, it would be very hard to come up with a reason why it would be okay with a little bit more information. And so I agree, I wish that we had clear answers to these questions that we asked. However, for me, having them or not having them doesn't, at this point, with everything I know, doesn't change my view. And I'm concerned about this idea that if we got clear answers, it might change our decision. Because at least for me, it's not going to. It's not for me a question about exactly where it is. I prefer to get clear answers from applicants, and I'm a little disappointed that we didn't. I think that would have made this a little easier. But for me, the decision is not based on the part of the answers that we're missing. So, for me, I come down on this one as a yes. I feel ultimately like I'm comfortable with this, but the rest of the board isn't, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm not going to try to change people's minds where they're made up, but I do want to check in on the extent to which people's wanting to be come down on a no is based on all of the information we have, not just on that we're missing a little bit of information, because I think the amount of information we're missing is so minor that I can't imagine, at least for me, any information coming in that would change how I would weigh the questions. And if everyone weighs it and it's like, no, this is a no, that's cool. And that can be the decision of this board, but I don't want to then in the same breath say, but if you come back with the answers to these questions, it might change, because I don't think that's true.
I would say that it may not be the same application, because if they change the location, it's not the same application. If they change the size of the building, it's not the same. The only variable that's the same is the actual.
But again, we're not granting the variance that we're being asked to grant doesn't specifically pertain to location or size, which I like. It's fine that it matters to me too, but if the location changes, like I can't imagine if it was all the way against this property line or square in the middle, that it's going to significantly change the answers to these questions, because the ones that I think it would speak to are the adverse impact question number 4, and then the undesirable change question number 1. And even though there wasn't unanimity, the board did end up on no on those. So like, I just want to make sure that people saying no is grounded even in kind of the whole universe of possibilities for location. And I think like the way that you, Clayton, and the way you, Charlie, answered the questions where you guys were in the minority of the board, like I heard your answers as actually being grounded in like any possibility they came up with, you were going to be a no. It wasn't that specific spot. It was like just kind of any spot is what I heard from you. And I just want to make sure that that's what we're saying, which, that's not where I'm at, but like, if that's where the board's at, that's where we're at. It's the decision.
The Clayton, you say no, because it changes the size of the theme of the shed. But the motive is because to respect what is there already. So that it should be appreciated instead of the opposite,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I thank you, all of you.
Yeah, and for us, the question is really like,
I don't know. It will take a while until we make also. If we do, this is going to be probably a zero thing for us for a few years. But thank you so much. I don't think they allow tiny houses, no. No, because I did before, and I think it was Alisa or Courtney, they say.
You can be under 500 square foot per house.
it has to be on a foundation.
Well, but it's a 2-acre lot.
It
so
is.
If you did a
2.5, 250 feet.
Okay,
And
But
we
they would
cannot
have
have
to-
small shed for
you
food.
need a bathroom.
My daughter has to go back and forth almost every day, back and forth, has like, no, it's okay. That doesn't make any difference. And for the neighbors, I'm sorry, there is only one who has so many structures there. And it's only one, probably the one who came. So we have to look at all these structures, and he can look at the little shed for tools.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before you leave, I just want to make sure you understand what we're saying when you go back to report to your board.
My daughter is going to be very,
Okay.
because even, you know, that land was a dump. I wanted to get someone to clean it, and she doesn't allow anybody to touch her. She's cleaning herself. That's the way she loves.
So,
So this is, I don't know.
please, can I just tell you, just so that we don't want your daughter to feel like she can't ever put the shed up. All we are really gonna be saying is if you want to put the shed up, just go to the building department with a drawing that shows where you want to put the shed that meets the setback requirements. That's all she has to
We
do to
had
start the
to draw
process.
before,
Excuse
but
me?
now when we found, excuse me, the new trees, and she decided, no way. In fact, I have a good friend who is an architect for the city, and she came the other day and said, how silent, what is Adriana doing? It's so different now. Look at the silence of this forest. The way she takes her is all vibration, it's all energy is there. And you are not allowing her to be just a little bit more comfortable working there. This is ridiculous, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because why?
We're not supposed to, I hear you, I think we all hear you. We're not really supposed to be doing a lot of back and forth. At this point, we're supposed to be having a board discussion, so. We've made a lot of space for us to all talk. But if you want to walk out, you can. We hadn't
What
finished.
What else?
Well, you can sit and, listen while we finish the meeting. But
I thought it was finished.
no, we didn't finish, but also the part that we're in now is the part where the board is talking and, we've been allowing you to speak. You don't have to speak. Technically, you're not supposed to right now, but we're pretty loose. We're pretty loose. But I just we're still deciding what we're gonna do. But I think we should not have, it would be better actually if you didn't speak up at this point, because I think we've heard everything that we need to hear from you, and now we just need to decide, and you don't have to stay, you can leave, but we're not gonna keep having back and forth. So.
We'll send a decision.
I can call
Yeah.
her.
Okay.
If you need to go, I can call you.
But Sam, can we just come back to what you were saying, because I think it's important in light of that recent court decision, which suggested that, thank you for circulating that, which said that we should make specific findings of fact to back up our decisions. And so I am a little bit concerned. For instance, if a position that as a finding of fact, any shed on
Accessory lot.
any accessory building on a lot that doesn't have a primary building would have a detrimental impact, because there would always be a danger of a visual impact. I would not sign on to that.
But we did not make that finding.
Right, so, but you were kind of like, maybe that's where you were going, was trying to feather it up. The
Well, I think-
contours
I
of
think
what we would decide.
If we're, no, I'm trying to make sure that what felt clear to me is that I don't think there's any specific information that we don't have that would come in that would change. I don't think anybody here is mine about whether on net this should be a yes or a no. And I don't want to create an impression in the mind of an applicant that the reason why we make a decision is because we either have or don't have a piece of specific information. Because I mean, there's a couple reasons I think that. One, there's been plenty of time for that information to be furnished. So if it was really, really essential, it's not at a certain point our responsibility to procure that information, kind of we've met it, right? And I think we've done that here. But then on the other hand, I actually really just feel that whatever the answers to this question ends up being, if we had specificity, I just don't really see how it would change that the overall question of like, should an accessory shed be allowed on this property in the absence of a principal structure? And, you know, for me, I look at the set of facts and our findings, and I come down feeling like, yes, it should be allowed because there's things that have much greater impact, such as building a primary structure. There's a lot of things that someone could do without any variance or any permit that, to my mind, have a much greater impact. And I find the specifics of this case compelling, where I personally am in favor of granting variance. But from what I'm hearing from everyone else, it seems like not everyone feels that way, which is a democratic board, and what we decide is what we decide. But I just want to make sure that we're not saying no because we don't have the specific answer, because we can't say no because we lack the specific answers and then get those specific answers and then say something different, because there's not enough substantial in the things that we're missing that would like lead to a different finding of fact.
If there was an actual map, I mean, I'm a builder, so every time I go for a building permit, I have to have a site. And if we had an actual site plan of exactly where it was, what the setbacks were, it shows you what the impact is, because then you can go on parcel viewer, you can actually look at really good. I would lean way farther towards a yes.
But the impact of what we're granting we're not granting site plan approval.
No,
We're not granting a permit.
but we're not going to set a precedent either of saying, you know, somebody else with a 2-acre lot that says, you know, well, we want to put it over here and it's directly in front of somebody's house. I don't think that that would be adequate.
But I think, to me, that actually just reinforces that we're saying that the place that the board is coming down of no is based on, because we can't limit that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're not approving a site plan and we're not approving a permit. We're saying the code enforcement can issue a permit, which looks at those things. And that's what I'm saying, like, because we can't govern that, we don't have the jurisdiction to govern that. If where we're saying is like, it matters a lot where exactly it goes, and we don't have control over that, therefore we agree with the original code as written, and we don't want to give a variance here. Like, we can say that, that's totally reasonable, but like the specifics actually fall outside of what we're, like the specifics of location fall outside of what we're answering. And that's why I don't want us to say, if we got a better map, it would change it here, because I just don't think it would.
At the end of the day, it's not worth anything.
Kind of.
Paper printed on.
I'll make it clear from my standpoint. My answer, regardless of change in application in the future, is still going to be a no. Okay. The simple reason for that is the town's wishes are to not allow sheds or secondary structures on non-primary occupied land.
Yeah.
Okay, if the town's plan in the future were to change that, then yes, then it could be acceptable. The minute we allow for one, then we're opening potential for others. There's a reason why this board in the past has not allowed those. Now, that's not to say that they can't in the future. I wouldn't discourage anybody from applying based on that. But given this application, it's never okay, because there wouldn't be the need for the variance. They have changed the application, not directly how it's going to impact the variance, but location, where it's being built, who's building it. I don't think the applicant is 100% clear where they want to be at the end of this. I don't think we can just arbitrarily say, yeah, you can put a shed wherever you want on that piece of property.
Right.
That's
Pending
no good.
setbacks and all that, but yeah.
Yeah, but my point is, then no longer that authority is not given to the board, it's given
Yeah.
to building.
Right.
Building code.
But if the thing is going to set a bad precedent,
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
then
And
it was from the beginning, no.
I think given this application, it's a no.
Okay.
And it's for no other reason.
So should we go back around, like, is everyone kind of on the same page about what at least what I think we're saying, like, again, I didn't talk to our lawyer, but like, I'm pretty confident that that's true. Based on my understanding. And like, I just don't want us to be saying no for like, we didn't get a specific answer when we don't. Like, not that that doesn't matter, but I don't think that any specific answer would make it different in terms of these 5 questions that we're in. So I'm still a yes on that, but is everyone else still a no? Yeah, Clay, you're still a no.
I mean, yes, I'm still, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, got you.
I'm right on the line.
Yeah.
As am I too. And Sam, just so one of the things that tips the balance in my favor, 2 things, because I probably would disagree with Clayton and Charlie about never saying yes to an applicant for a variance under these.
Oh, no, I never said to say no to them all. I'm saying until the town's direction is to start allowing this to happen.
So it
Then
doesn't,
they don't need a variance.
Exactly.
Well, then they don't need a variance. So, but I'm just saying that the things that counsel to me for not granting it under these circumstances are 2. One is that under these circumstances, we're weighing the benefit to the community versus the benefit of the applicant. And in this situation, unfortunately, the applicant's responsiveness to the ZBA has not been stellar. And if indeed we are, I didn't realize that this would be breaking every single precedent up until now. I didn't understand that no ZBA had ever granted such.
I don't know that there's been a lot of requests.
Yeah, I may have only been 2.
I think it's
Okay, well, that makes a difference to me. That makes a difference to me because.
and one kind of got withdrawn, the one with the garage house, that one ended up getting withdrawn, right? Because they
The
figured,
one on Old Kings Highway.
yeah,
Well, they,
it was never denied. They withdrew it because they ended up being able to build the house first.
well, they took the garage and made a house out.
Right, yeah, right, so it was withdrawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be a no.
And I guess the fact that they could, there is the answer that we have is that this is a problem of their own creation and or that they could solve it simply by combining the 2 lots. We all understand why you don't want to do that, but it could be done. Whereas other applicants, that might not be a possibility.
Right.
And finally, the burden of having to reapply with a plan does not seem that great when there's no evidence that this is anything that the applicant herself or her daughter is so anxious to get in the ground within the next month, 2 months, 3 months. We have no information that indicates that a delay would be detrimental. So that's why I'm landing where I'm landing with it.
Okay. And that's similar for you? Yeah. Okay, well, I guess we should write a determination and then we can vote on the determination. So I'm just going to write it together, but I'll kind of write and talk out loud. So it's hereby determined by the town of Rochester zoning board of appeals. The request for an area variance is denied. This determination.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Don't you have to do a motion
Yes.
first?
We gotta write it. You gotta
He's
write
trying to
the,
write the
I'm trying to
motion.
write the motion.
Okay.
This determination is based on a careful weighing of the facts of this. So it sounds like what we're saying in general is it's substantial, it's self-created, and there's alternatives. And because of it being substantial and there being alternatives and it being self-created, even though we kind of feel that there's not a negative impact, just like the granting of a variance is sort of it's a major step. And because there's other options here, right? Like I think like Ken just said, sometimes it's not self-created and sometimes there aren't other options. And in that instance, maybe we come out on a different, okay. In the end,
Ken's got some
because the need for a variance was substantial and self-created, and because other options than a variance exist. I don't know, I'm not super good at writing this.
Can we say without prejudice?
What does that mean for you in this instance?
It means that there's nothing that we're saying here that would be conclusive if the applicant were to submit another permit with a drawing and it was denied based on the fact that it's an accessory building on a lot.
I just surmise that at the end, the applicant does have the option to reapply with more specific
because
information in the future.
yeah, because otherwise I think, there might be a
Or
way.
wouldn't it still be, but in that case, it would still be self-created, it would still be substantial.
Exactly.
Other options would still exist.
Right, so that's why I'm not comfortable with resting solely on those.
But you want to add more to that.
Well, I don't want us, and I don't think that, at least some of us, I don't think, are trying to tell the applicant that you can't do this. I mean, maybe Clayton, I'm not sure where you would land on this.
I'm absolutely not telling them that there's no option in the future because we don't know 6 months from now where the town is going
But
to
those
lie.
options are zoning changes or you build a principal structure.
That's correct.
That's not, and I don't know, if you feel the same way or not. I don't feel that way.
Well, what would the thing be that would change for you?
The thing that would change would be if they produce a site plan so that there was no question about the extent to which there might be visual impact on a neighbor. It wouldn't totally eliminate it, yes, the leaves will
But you
fall.
would feel more confident,
I would
even
feel,
though they could then do something different once they got the permit.
right, that we would have, we did our we did our due diligence and.
But that's not to say that the decision wouldn't still be rendered the same. It could still, the equation could still surmise to, no, we don't know.
Right, but that, well, when we say without prejudice, it simply means that we haven't decided, as a final matter that, no variance from the applicant on this particular property will ever be approved. Because of this.
Well, see, unfortunately, we have to make a decision on this application. We can't partially give a decision.
I think Ken's
It's
just saying,
no
like,
to this,
if they came back with something a little bit different,
then that's fine. Then
that's
that
what he's
statement,
saying. That's
we
what
could
he's saying without
reapply.
prejudice, yeah. And then we're not saying that there's no instance ever, which is okay with me. Okay, so this is determination based on the careful weighing of facts of this application. In the end, the board determined that because the need for a variance is substantial and self-created, and because other options than a variance exist, the application should be denied without prejudice. So should we say more specifically where we're at?
Can I make one,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but this application, which now has no site plan and no identification of a particular structure, is denied.
Application.
But does that apply to the variance issue?
Well, he's
It
saying it
applies
does
to our
in the sense.
decision making. Yes, we would weigh that in as far as environmental impact or impact to the other people, surrounding landowners. But the application, the cut in your eye of it, I think, is can they put a non-primary structure on a piece of property that doesn't have a primary structure?
If-
I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, this is an easy one.
I wish, if that were the question, we might have a different conclusion, right? If we were simply saying, in any situation, can you do that? I don't know. I wouldn't want to be saying no to, I would.
I mean, it sounds to me like, again, where everyone else's no is coming from is that it's that it's substantial because it's like a binary choice. We're not just turning the dial 5%. And because it's self-created, right? They could just leave it with no shed, or they could obviate the need for a variance by combining, there's multiple options. That's in the end really the reason. That,
And the option of looking to the agricultural side.
right. Which there could be a primary structure and then you wouldn't need a variance.
The agricultural side.
Well, agriculture can be a principal,
Then we become principals.
but it has to be determined to be agriculture. And the code enforcement office said that it wasn't agriculture.
Which they would apply.
They
that-
turn it into farming, tree farming, or whatever you want to call it.
But that's not.
Yeah, I wouldn't throw examples out there just because we don't know what their intention is, but I think just saying without prejudice kind of covers the whole lot.
Okay.
So let's say it's hereby determined by the town of Rochester that although the specific request here will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood or environment. The need for a variance is nonetheless both substantial and self-created, and because other options in a variance exist. This is a really bad sentence. Sorry, I need to start over. Is he ready to? Although the board finds that the specific requester will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood environment, the need for variances nonetheless both substantial and self-created. Because other options than a variance exist, the application does not
Consider, oh, not consider.
what did you, it's like not, doesn't present enough benefit to the applicant to outweigh it's not provide enough benefit, the needs for the applicant or the town to meet the threshold for granting a variance and should be denied without prejudice. Okay, so determination. It's hereby determined by the town of Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals that the request for a variance is denied. Although the board finds that the specific request here will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood or environment, the need for a variance is nonetheless both substantial and self-created. Additionally, because other options than a variance exist, the application does not provide enough benefit to the applicant or the town to meet the threshold for granting a variance, should be denied without prejudice. Sound okay to the lawyer?
Can we say anything about the current application in the absence of a site plan?
We could say,
What you need, there's no need to,
No need to.
no, because they have this, which helps. So when they go to redo their next application, submit a new application, they can look back at this and say, okay, let's make sure that.
well, we could say additionally, because other options than a variance exist and the applicant,
I don't think you do it.
and the
Okay,
applicant
that's-
has not provided. And has not provided detailed information about their proposed project. The applicant, okay, so I just added, it's nonetheless both substantially and self-created. Additionally, because other options in a variance exist, and because the applicant has not provided detailed information about their proposed project, the application does not furnish, so I'm not saying provided twice, submitted detailed information about the proposed project, the application does not provide enough benefit to the applicant or the town to meet the threshold for granting a variance and should be denied without prejudice. The application just does not at this time provide, or whatever it's fine. Okay, so what we're going to vote on is the findings, which we went through before. That was the questions 1 through 5. So we had the yeses and nos are confusing, but we went through that. There was not unanimity, and we read through what we wrote for all of our findings. And then the determination, I'll just read one more time. As hereby determined by the Town of Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals that the request for a variance is denied. Although the board finds that the specific request here will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood or environment, the need for the variance is nonetheless both substantial and self-created. Additionally, because other options than a variance exist, and because the applicant has not submitted detailed information about their proposed findings, the board finds
Detailed information about their proposed
project.
project.
The board finds that the application does not provide enough benefit to the applicant or the town to meet the threshold for granting a variance and should be denied without prejudice, or is. Options. Okay. Will you do, I guess we should do, it doesn't have to be a roll call, but sometimes it's a roll call vote. Oh, sorry. You want to make the motion, Charlie?
I'll make a motion to deny the application
And with the findings.
with the findings, I'll second them.
Okay. We'll do a roll call just for fun.
Oh, yay.
Sam,
I vote no. So
Charlie,
No.
you want to vote yes?
Yes. Yes. Yes, to deny.
Yes, it's a vote.
Ken,
Equal for me.
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Harley,
Okay, motion carries. The variance is denied. Sorry to say. You can always reapply or use one of the other options available that you don't like as much. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for taking the time. Okay, we have no new applications, procedural matters and other business. We have some minutes to approve. I have to confess, I did not review the ones, but I did the April. I'm so sorry, Jasmine. I've gotten so little sleep. I mean, I'm comfortable approving, what's that? Yeah, July is terrible. I'm very comfortable, I'm comfortable making a motion to approve the April minutes.
Yeah, what did we, no, it doesn't cut it. I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor of approving the April 20th minutes? Anyone opposed? Okay, April 20th are approved. Let's all make sure we review the June 15th, and that's especially for me, so that even if I haven't, someone else can make the motion next time. And apologies just publicly to Jasmine, who put them together like 2 or 3 weeks ago and has asked me multiple times to review them. So it's 100% on me, just so that the public knows.
See, I vote out, so how can they vote out?
Oh, well, okay, so will you email them to
I
Charlie?
did not get.
into Google Drive, so you need me to send you
To send them an email.
copies. Okay,
Okay.
If you can see.
I'll just,
Yeah,
I will start
Everyone can
sending
get a
them to
BCC.
everyone when I am done with them, because that's what I had to do for,
It
Yeah.
does need to be a BCC.
Yes, 'cause
and we
then I
can't
gotta
have
go-
discussion.
Oh,
Just so everyone knows, just a
you
reminder.
can make suggestions to me on what I need to fix. You can't discuss it with each other.
that's
Exactly. Okay, we do have we have one other application that I don't know how to say it, the garage one.
Yeah.
Quentin,
Whitfield, right?
Quentin. And I think there's another one that's come in, but no, that's it, right? So I don't know, they wanted to postpone because they're out of town. They should be back for August, but right now that's the only thing on our August agenda.
You can start a public hearing on it.
No, yeah, we're not, there's no time
Well,
pressure.
an application.
They sent us all the stuff that we asked for,
They're just not.
and
here
it's in
to
the Google Drive. They've been very responsive and given us detailed
come Mailed me stuff from them.
including
being
a
on vacation
cardboard
and
model.
everything. I got everything else. I did not get no cardboard model. I have to call her.
You're not serious, right?
Yes.
No, they said there was a cardboard model.
I have to call her about it.
But that's
Every-
Henneman.
Kind of in the garage.
It's the guy who,
Discussed it last meeting.
Bjorncorn guy.
oh,
With,
yeah,
with the water issue?
yeah. You,
But that's still in our,
it's in the drum.
drive. And we did get a bunch of new information that just wasn't on the
Oh.
agenda.
Sorry.
It
Yeah, we
was-
got some new information.
Yeah, they sent us a bunch of stuff.
I helped you guys.
Yeah.
Soon as I get it.
That was not the bridge.
Yeah. It's got a bunch of new.
Somebody got
information.
here.
They were just out of town traveling and they wanted to be here, so they asked. So those should be on our August agenda,
Oh,
but there's nothing else in our queue, just so people know.
That's all on that Google Drive.
Yeah,
I can send, so you can review it.
Quick question,
yeah.
with the variances for having an accessory building. If the building is under 200 square foot, would that need a building permit?
That is a question. I don't know the answer. I think you still need a zoning permit.
You
But I don't
have
know.
Variance issues.
You wouldn't have variance.
You wouldn't have, not variance, I mean,
Setback issues, but it would still
Okay,
be.
it's
an
still required.
It
Now-
have to be, not like, can't be 2 feet from the property line. It's gotta
Yeah,
be,
setbacks.
it,
But you wouldn't need a
Setback.
building permit, you would, at that point, you still need a zoning.
You would still need
Still need a
40, 35
Yeah.
setback.
But that's a code enforcement question.
Yeah, you would need a variance.
Still need variance.
Now, how do they determine agricultural buildings? Because
So,
It's a good question.
so,
I've got an acre and a third in Marlton.
you can
And
say.
I built an
this is for
agricultural building.
business.
so the code enforcement officer determines. And the code enforcement officer uses the code and, that's their job to determine it. Someone disagrees with the code enforcement determination, they can appeal that to us and we can either uphold the code enforcement decision or we can make a difference.
That makes sense.
But that's how, if you go to the code enforcement and you think it's an ag building and they think it's not, then you could appeal that.
Which, somebody had an agricultural site trying to put that up. Then we really wouldn't have much to say.
What do you want to do, put a shed up?
Oh,
Take a freaking trailer and put a main
That's
plate.
not
on it,
allowed,
and-
that's not allowed.
What do you mean it's not?
10-year main plate.
Well, we don't want to start saying
Yeah,
things that.
no, it's-
are muted.
Not
a
allowed.
lot.
I didn't think.
Yeah,
said
we need
trailer.
to-
Yeah.
Anybody else,
Like a house store.
anyone else have anything germane to the planning board?
You answered my question.
No, I asked about some information on training and I did get, eventually I was able to track down.
There's, DEC has been very sparse in the information they've been sending me. I haven't received anything in several weeks.
The planning association has some trainings coming up.
Sorry.
One in September,
Okay.
live in Hyde Park. And I think there might be some others on video. I'll try and get more.
Yeah, if you get information, please forward it to me. If I get it, I'll
Also,
forward it
you
to
get
everybody else too.
your stipends for training hours.
Yeah, I just need to get my 4 hours. Charlie, loan me some hours, would you?
Okay. Well, let's, yeah, we.
Deadline's
Trainings were
And Sheila.
for the zoning board seat that I have to complete. I have, what, 6 months from the time.
I'll call Mike on Tuesday when he's back from vacation. and talk about it.
You've always done it.
Okay, anyone?
Not, yeah, no, it's
I'll
all.
make a
yeah,
motion, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right, that's it, we're done. Meeting adjourned at 7:45.
I didn't know that.